Most people think that stopping binge eating is all about sheer willpower or just trying harder. But what if I told you that that is completely wrong? What if I told you that your brain and your gut are actually driving those binges in ways that you didn't even realize? In this video, I'm going to reveal to you the 3 hidden ways that your brain and gut could actually be making you binge more. As a registered dietitian who specializes in gut health and who has also personally overcome binge eating myself, I know this topic very deeply, and that's why I've created a free tool to help you manage your cravings. This is something that I wish I had years ago when I was struggling with binge eating. So if you want it completely for free, you can grab it in the link down below. Now let's get into the video. So those intense emotions that are triggering you to binge are influenced by what's happening inside your gut. Like, your gut is literally producing chemicals that directly affect your mood and your emotions, okay? So let me just explain how this works by using my handy iPad. Okay, you know, things are about to get serious when the iPad comes out. If you watch my previous video, then you'll know what I'm talking about when I say the gut-brain axis. So obviously your brain is on top over here, and then you have your gut at the bottom here, and then you have this connection, which is basically like a two-way street between your brain and your gut, and that's how they communicate to each other. Like, you've probably heard that people call your gut the second brain, and it's because they keep sending signals to each other all the time through this thing called the gut brain axis. What your gut brain axis allows to happen is that your brain can influence the way that your gut functions, and then your gut can also send signals to your brain to influence how you think and feel. And then you also have to know that your gut is home to trillions of bacteria. Like, you see these little purple guys down there? Those are your gut bacteria. And you have good gut bacteria, harmful gut bacteria, and all this makes up your microbiome, which is a fancy word of saying like the makeup or composition of your gut bacteria. One of the most important things that your good gut bacteria does is it produces something called short chain fatty acids. These little guys are your short chain fatty acids, and one of the things that they do is they actually help to produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. And you may know that serotonin is also known as this feel-good chemical. But did you know that your gut produces about 95% of your body's serotonin? So this means that if you have poor gut health, right, and you don't have enough good gut bacteria, you have less of them, that means that you're producing less short chain fatty acids, all right? And because you're not producing as many short chain fatty acids, you're also not releasing as much serotonin. And so that's one of the ways in which your gut affects your brain, okay? You have less serotonin. And so what does this mean? This means that if you have less of the feel-good hormone in your brain, then that can potentially lead to you feeling more sad, frustrated, or depressed. And when you have all of these feelings, it can make it more likely for you to binge, to, as a coping mechanism. So similar to this, another thing that these short chain fatty acids do is they help us to maintain dopamine levels in our brain. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter that makes us feel pleasure, motivation, satisfaction, and reward. So if we're also not producing enough dopamine in addition to not producing enough serotonin, then no wonder why it's difficult for us to feel good about ourselves all the time. And I'm not making this up because there's studies out there that show that people who have depression are more likely to, or they tend to have lower levels of short chain fatty acids in their gut. So what does all this lead to? Well, like we said, when your brain's not getting the right levels of serotonin and dopamine, then you're gonna get low mood. You're gonna feel, more depressed, more easily frustrated. You might not be able to regulate your emotions as well. And so when our mood is low, then binge eating easily becomes a coping mechanism. So it's not that you're weak, it's just that this is the way that your brain has learned to cope with the resources that it has. Just know that it's 100% possible to rewire your brain so that you stop using food as a coping mechanism. Like, this is something that I taught myself to do as well. So when we have poor gut health, we're more prone to something called leaky gut, and I explained this a little bit more in my previous video as well. But basically, when you have leaky gut, you get harmful bacteria that can end up in your bloodstream, and this triggers inflammation. This inflammation in your body activates something called the HPA axis. When this is activated, then you end up releasing more cortisol, which you might know is the stress hormone. And so we get more inflammation, more cortisol, and more stress. And when we're stressed, so much research shows that this increases our appetite, it increases our cravings, and it increases our desire / motivation to eat more tasty processed foods. So obviously all of these things can make it more likely for us to binge eat. And that's because binge eating can make us feel temporarily better about ourselves or distract us from our problems. And it's a coping mechanism, even if it makes us feel guilty later on, it serves a purpose in some way, which is to make us feel better in that moment. Understanding this really shifted my perspective because I realized that gut health isn't just about digestion. It's very closely linked to having uncontrollable urges to binge eat. When I was trying to recover from my binge eating and having more regular meals, I remember one night when I wasn't even halfway through eating my dinner yet, and I was already thinking about the next thing I was going to eat. This has happened to me so many times before, and I would just keep having the desire to eat even though I'm physically full. I'm not mentally satisfied, and I would have this internal battle with myself where I'd be like, oh, you shouldn't restrict yourself, you should just eat what you want. And then I would have another part of me be like, why are you craving so much junk food all the time? You just had your meal, that's enough, stop it, And it wasn't until I learned what I'm about to share with you that my perspective and my behavior started to change. This brings us to the third and final way that your brain and your gut make you binge eat more. If you're someone who feels like you never really feel fully satisfied with food or with your meals, then it could be that your brain and your gut aren't properly communicating with each other to signal to yourself that you're full and satisfied. So how does this work? Let's go back to our little friends, the short chain fatty acids. One thing that short chain fatty acids do is they help to reduce your hunger hormone ghrelin. So what happens when you don't have enough of these short chain fatty acids in your gut? Then you actually end up with higher levels of ghrelin. Ghrelin makes us feel hungry. Yes, that's the basic function of what it does. But it's also involved in the reward system of our brain. So more ghrelin actually makes us feel like there's a higher reward value when we eat food. So what does this mean? So if you have more of this hunger hormone ghrelin in your body, then when you eat a certain food, you feel like it's more rewarding. And so what does this do? If you feel more rewarded for having something, then obviously it's going to make you desire it even more in the future. If you play a game and you get a reward, then you're going to want to keep repeating that behavior. This is how dopamine works in your brain, right? So similar to what stress does for you in your body is it increases your desire for these processed foods. So that's why certain foods like, cookies, ice cream, fries, potato chips, whatever, they feel extremely rewarding to eat and they can very easily become addictive. On the flip side, short chain fatty acids are really good because they trigger the release of a hormone that makes us feel full and satisfied. So one example is GLP-1. Let's say this is you, right? I mean, I should have said this from the beginning, but this is you and you have poor gut health and you don't have enough short chain fatty acids in your gut, then you're not triggering the release of enough of GLP-1. So you actually have less GLP-1 in your body, which means that you're not feeling as full and satisfied from your meals. So this is like the really big thing that I was like, whoa, this was like a big light bulb moment for me when I realized, because what GLP-1 does is it not only decreases your appetite, but it also decreases the rewarding value of food. So basically like the opposite of what ghrelin does, which is your hunger hormone. Fullness. And then this is hunger. This is literally how weight loss medications like Ozempic and Mounjaro work. They're literally called GLP-1 agonists. And so all of these factors make it so that food becomes so incredibly difficult to resist and we feel out of control around them, and it becomes so much more likely for us to binge. It just creates this vicious cycle where you have poor gut health and you have all of these things making it even harder for you to stop binge eating, which makes your gut health even worse. So how do you actually fix all of this? What most people do after they have a binge is they will start to restrict. The logical answer is that, okay, let's cut all of these foods out of our diet. Like, let's throw out all of these cookies and ice creams and biscuits and whatever. Start fresh tomorrow. I'm gonna get on a new diet, whatever. And you're just taking these foods out of the equation when the underlying factor is still there of your body is still having this like addiction to these foods. And so that is what keeps a lot of people trapped in this cycle. But how do you actually get out of this cycle? You need to focus on something different. Don't focus on cutting things out of your diet even more or restricting your diet even more. You need to focus on actually healing your gut and your body by nourishing yourself enough, by having regular meals, having meals 3 times a day, having snacks 2 to 3 times a day in between your meals. And once you start to nourish your body properly, you start to heal your guts, then naturally you will get more in tune with your hunger signals, okay? When you focus on fixing this and you get rid of this, then naturally, okay, you end up having more good gut bacteria. You end up having more short chain fatty acids, all right? And you end up having the opposite of all of these. So you have more of the feel-good hormones, you have less inflammation, you have less of the stress hormone cortisol, you have lower hunger levels, you have more fullness and satisfaction after you eat your meal, so you don't feel the need or the urge to binge. And then all of this in turn affects the way that your brain responds, okay? Your mood improves, your stress levels decrease, or you learn how to manage your stress better, and your appetite decreases, your craving decreases, your desire for processed food decreases, and it makes it so much easier for you to actually stop binge eating. All right. And so in order to break this cycle, you have to focus on the root cause of it in the first place. And I'm not saying that actually poor gut health is the root cause of binge eating. Absolutely not. Like, there's so many other factors that play into this, social factors, environmental factors, and so this is just one part of the picture. But when you start to heal your body, then biologically it becomes easier. If you would like more support on this and you want to know exactly what to do when you get the urge to binge eat, then definitely check out my free craving tool. It will walk you through step by step how to handle your cravings and what to think as you get an urge to binge eat. And if you got some value out of this video, then you definitely need to watch my previous video where I talk about how your gut health keeps you trapped in the binge restrict cycle. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one.